The High-Reach Extendable Turret, or HRET, provides our firefighters with many tactical advantages useful in aircraft rescue and firefighting. In tests, an HRET with a skin-penetrating nozzle outperformed a standard roof-mounted turret and handline.
High-Reach Extendable Turret is an excellent tool for us to use on the fire ground. You can conserve agent because you are more effective and precise in your agent application.
There are many different uses for an HRET vehicle.
The HRET features an extendable reach, an increased agent throw range, and the ability to be repositioned without moving the airport firefighting vehicle. The HRET places the nozzle well forward and below the operator, eliminating foam overspray and providing a clearer view of the agent as it is being applied. The truck's ability to position the nozzle nearer to and in alignment with the target allows more precise aiming, reduces disruption from wind, and helps conserve agent.
It's basically a tactical truck. You can serve your agent quite well. You can go over here and fight a pull fire. You can go over here, fight an engine fire. You're using it for many smaller different purposes.
When the nozzle is positioned at the seat of the fire, the HRET can apply agent directly on the burning surface and extinguish ground fires. This positioning eliminates the raindrop application, a situation that generally results in wasted agent as the heated smoke plume and wind carry agent away from the fire. The precise positioning the HRET offers is very effective in fighting fires on aircraft undercarriage, and the HRET turret can also be used in elevated positions, placing it near an elevated engine or wing fuel tank fire to cut off running fuel fires. Another capability of the HRET is that it lets the operator choose between using a high-flow or low-flow application to fight a fire. A high-flow rate is the most effective way to overcome the intense heat and quickly control large fires, while low-flow helps to conserve agent and maintain the integrity of the foam blanket. Interior fires in a closed compartment or fuselage present a number of challenges to our personnel, but FAA tests have proven that the HRET with a piercing nozzle is a valuable tool for the rapid suppression of interior fires. To begin with, the piercing tip at the end of the HRET can discharge a pattern of approximately 40 feet for up to 12 minutes from a 3,000-gallon ARF vehicle, or up to 6 minutes for a 1,500-gallon truck. An HRET is also useful for ventilation strategies.
An HRET could go right down the side of the fuselage and just poke out the windows. That is a significant assistance.
Combined with ventilation, the application of water into the interior of an aircraft using a penetrating nozzle provides for rapid cooling and fire knockdown, all resulting in extended survivable conditions throughout the aircraft that can allow equipment and personnel to commence rescue operations in a less hazardous environment. An ARF vehicle with an HRET can be equipped to dispense dry chemical or clean streaming agent like Halon 1211 or Halotron 1. Complementary agent can also be dispensed through individual hose reels or through combined agent systems, which mix one or more complementary agent lines with a water foam line. In addition to complementary agent hose reels, there are HRET options available that discharge selected complementary agents at the tip of the boom, or in some cases through the piercing tip. These units can discharge agent to any position that the complementary discharge nozzle on the elevated boom can reach. HRETs are also designed to help gather firefighting intelligence.
Some of the features that a high-reach extendable turret have are a FLIR camera, spot, and flood lighting, and color cameras. So we can use this boom in multiple scenarios to get us a good indicator and read on what's going on inside the aircraft, outside the aircraft. These things will actually fit inside the door. We can actually take a look inside the door as well.
The FAA and other groups have conducted studies to better understand the capabilities of the high-reach extendable turret. Many of these are posted on the FAA's ARF website. This video will arm you with some of the information that you will need to be effective with this powerful tool. But only continued practice will make you a skilled and qualified HRET operator.
When the adrenaline gets going, you're going to perform the way you practice. If you don't practice, you may or may not fall back on good habits.
Training is critical in every area of firefighting, and even more so with the HRET. An emergency is not the time to realize you are unfamiliar with controls or lack the confidence to act quickly. Manufacturers are an excellent source of guidance for operators as they train to become thoroughly familiar with the equipment.
These pieces of equipment are not real difficult, but they are unique. These turrets, based on the manufacturer, do have somewhat of a different feel. In fact, actually, between generations, they'll have different feels.
With the high flow rates an HRED is capable of, even a few seconds pointed off target wastes large quantities of precious agent.
It can't be something that you just practice at once in a while. You have to have a comfort level for successful operation.
Each ARF department should have an established qualification standard to certify an HRED training officer, as well as a recertification program. Vehicle drivers and operators, in turn, should successfully complete a formalized internal training program as a prerequisite for a formal certification process. Instructors should follow a lesson plan that identifies learning objectives, critical performance items, department standard operating guidelines on tactics and strategies, aircraft construction, vehicle familiarization, and methods of evaluating proficiency. Each certified operator should be prepared to demonstrate his or her knowledge and proficiency annually for requalification. After completing classroom training, there are several different ways to train for HRED operation. Some facilities are equipped with simulators that feature full-size cab mock-ups. Customized simulation programs allow a student to drive an HRED-equipped vehicle around a virtual model of their home airport, respond to an aircraft incident, fight a fire, and even penetrate an aircraft using the HRED and piercing nozzle, all within a virtual environment. Other virtual training is available in the form of computer software. HRED operators in training can use joysticks and controls based on those found on actual ARF vehicles to develop their skills. Whether you are training virtually or with real equipment, it is important to remember that HRED controls are designed to be operated from either the driver's seat or the right-hand seat, so training operators from either seat may be necessary. Each seat offers different views of the controls, the boom, and the aircraft or training mock-up. Operators should also practice operating joysticks and controls with both hands, not just their dominant hand. Making the best use of an HRED turret requires different techniques than those you might use with a conventional turret. HRED turret operators need to develop a good sense of range and aim and hone their accuracy from stationary positions as well as during pump and roll. Turret training aids are easy to set up.
You might go out there and put 15 to 20 traffic cones in one area and go off another couple hundred feet and put 10 to 15 traffic cones in another area, and suggest to these firefighters that when you pull up on this ramp, there's going to be an aircraft on this ramp. There are flames around the aircraft's going to be made out of traffic cones. The truck goes in and knocks all the cones off in that one area. Then it goes off in another area, extinguishing the other flames by knocking over the other traffic cones. Another exercise could be, you want to teach them how to conserve agent. You set up these cones and you tell them, but they got to cover this fuel spills within these cones.
Proficiency with turret operations can only be developed through training exercises like these and experience.
It's just like piloting an aircraft. You want to fly like you train and train like you fly, and that's what firefighters need to do. They need to have that real experience of what it's going to be like when they're faced with that situation.
Piercing an aircraft fuselage to fight interior fires is the most critical skill for HRED operation. It is very important for HRED operators to complete piercing training so they can penetrate a fuselage accurately and without hesitation during a real incident. Starting out, you can practice manipulating and aiming the controls every day during apparatus checkout and run-up. Raising, rotating, and repositioning the boom and turrets will help develop your skill as well as make you aware of any mechanical issues. But remember, before performing an actual piercing, ARF team members should have completed classroom training and computer-based piercing training if available. The best case scenario for piercing training is to have an actual aircraft fuselage to practice on, which will provide you with the most realistic simulation and give you the opportunity for hands-on evaluation of penetration depths, difficult areas, and interior spray patterns. But not all ARF departments have access to an aircraft fuselage. Instead, some airports use an aircraft skin penetration trainer to practice piercing.
We now have the penetration aircraft skin trainer. You'll see this around the country, in fact around the world. The aluminum is very similar to many different types of aircraft, and it feels just like the aluminum that you'll go through on the aircraft.
The stable, stationary, or portable structure puts the panels at the same height as the fuselage of the airport's most common aircraft. The panels may be movable or replaceable to simulate different aircraft types. When piercing a skin penetration trainer like this, you should always have a safety spotter present.
There is a problem with people using other things, other stuff. to penetrate and practice. None of them come close to simulating an aircraft fuselage.
We saw that folks have been practicing on barrels or cars, things that might not really represent in real life, having to get up really high.
We still have people wanting to use a steel bus, for instance. You use that, you can actually bend the tip, put your trucks out of service for a while.
To practice approach distances and aiming, you can simply wrap some colored ribbon around a few links on a tall chain-link fence. Make sure they are at different heights to simulate low, mid, and high range attack positions. Practice approaching, setting up, and stopping the vehicle at an appropriate distance from the fence. Use the controls to raise the boom and pierce the fence link in one of the identified areas. This is not a substitute for piercing training, but it will help you develop eye-hand coordination, attack angle, and precision. Good HRED operators know that piercing proficiency is all about developing a feel for the controls and equipment. You should become familiar with the feeling of the tip or guide piece as it first touches the aircraft or trainer skin and the forces and sounds of the actual piercing. Be aware of the sounds and movements associated with water pumping through the piercing tip and discharging on the other side of the panel, and learn to recognize the feeling of aluminum pulling against the tip as it exits the hole. By feel, you should be able to minimize drag, ensuring that you penetrate and withdraw the tip in as straight and steady a motion as possible. Some HRET models require that the piercing tip always remain in line with the boom during piercing operations. However, it is advisable that the piercing tip should be as perpendicular to the aircraft body as possible. When piercing passenger aircrafts, the piercing tip should always be horizontal to the ground or aircraft deck so as to avoid the pattern being blocked between the seat backs. Make sure to review the HRET manufacturer's guidance on piercing angles. By doing this, you will minimize wear and tear and prevent damage to the tip and HRET assembly. HRET booms can rotate 30 degrees off centerline to either side without the need for stabilizers. This is helpful for final positioning of the tip and for multiple penetrations. However, rotating the turret during piercing will damage the penetrating assembly. While many HREDs come standard with automatic or programmed boom controls to pre-position attack positions or perform auto-bedding, you should also be competent in achieving these positions manually without automatic functions.
If you have a pre-programmed setting and you're doing a lot of other things and listening communications and you have a total disaster on your hands, yes, a pre-programmed setting may come in handy then. Other than that, make it a rule that you always operate in the manual mode.
Manual override procedures for joystick, electrical, or hydraulic failure can be found in your HRED Owner's Guide. HRED and piercing training should be conducted in all lighting conditions. Night training will help operators get used to artificial lighting conditions. You should also train with FLIR cameras, which can be useful in low visibility response as well as to identify heat signatures in any lighting conditions. FLIR training will help you identify piercing locations, evaluate firefighting effectiveness, and plan your next step.
And then that way you can be assured if you go out there at night, you're prepared to make that penetration.
Safety is the most important part of any firefighting operation, and safety training is critical for HRED operators. As with most other ARF tools, there are safety concerns with the HRED that firefighters must be aware of during both training and when responding to real-life incidents. First, a straight stream of water can itself be dangerous. At 250 pounds per square inch, water can knock people over, blow them off wing, or push them back into the burning aircraft. It can rip escape slides off a plane and push fire to uninvolved locations. Always take extreme care when aiming a stream of water from a nozzle or hand line. Although power lines typically run underground at airports, arguably the greatest hazard to any unmanned extendable aerial boom like the HRED is the possibility of contact with energized power lines. As a result, most fire department standard operating procedures require operators to maintain at least a 10-foot separation between obstructions in the aerial. It is crucial to remember that electricity from power lines can arc several feet to a boom. Metal, water, and other fluids conduct electricity. Airports have additional safety restrictions on booms. Raising an HRED in an obstruction-free zone can be very dangerous for taking off or landing aircraft and may violate the restrictions imposed by Part 77, Objects Affecting Navigable Airspace. HREDs may also be subject to the same restrictions placed on construction cranes on or near the airport. ARF departments should work with airport operations and FAA control tower personnel to determine boom restrictions at their airports. HRET piercing nozzles also introduce additional safety concerns. HRETs use hydraulic pressures of up to 3,000 pounds per square inch to puncture holes in the skin of the aircraft. The sheer force of a penetration can be extremely hazardous to ARF crews, aircraft occupants, or anyone in close proximity to them. ARF crews must follow all procedures for safety, operation, and maintenance of the HRET and skin-penetrating training device to protect personnel and equipment. A qualified safety officer, empowered to immediately stop any activity that poses a danger to life, should be on hand during all piercing operations.
You all are trained for this. Take advantage of all the training that you can get access to, whether you're operating a high-reach extendable turret, whether you're familiarizing yourself with the outline and the layout of a cargo aircraft, where the exits are. You never know when you're going to be called on. And when you're called on, there are people whose lives are depending on you responding appropriately.
It was around 1989, 1990. I was in the United States Air Force, transitioning then at the time into civilian life, into fire chief at a Midwestern airport here. I first started noticing the research vehicles. It was a P-19 crash truck. And on top of this P-19 crash truck, I noticed they had a boom. It was a HRET, as they call it now, and I was very interested in it. I thought that this was going to be very important technology for the future of aircraft rescue. A lot of people just didn't know a lot about the technology. We were placing these HRETs on top of trucks that were 9.5 feet wide, same as two-story buildings on 6 tires with a 50-foot flagpole on top of it. That's what it was like. So it was a very unique experience trying to drive one of these things. Now, of course, what you see behind me here is the results of a lot of that earlier pioneering.
The Safety Board investigated an accident in Memphis, and one of the things that came out of that accident was the use of the high-reach extendable turret and the positive communication and coordination between the crews that were on site.
Upon arriving on the scene, we saw the FedEx plane had skidded off the runway, leaning to the right, whereas the right fuselage had collapsed.
A2 and A3, one was a Rhino, the other's a Snozzle. They went in.
I then raised the Snozzle, cut the water on and foam AFFF, whereas I started working on the fuselage, and I knew there were passengers in the cockpit, so I was trying to keep the flyer off the fuselage.
They went in at low flow. Due to the wind, I could see it wasn't reaching the plane from my location. I got on the radio and told them to go ahead and move in on top of it.
So I went from low flow to high flow. And that's what made me do the decision. I said, well, I'm going to give them 600 GPM. I know I have more power. And at that moment, I made just an instant decision to go from low flow to high flow. And once I did, I succeeded.